Hello everybody, this is another Hot Wheels collector video. Today we are going to be looking at the Mitsubishi Pajero Evo. This is a brand new casting for 2023 and this is the second recolour of this car, which does feature as a new recolour in the 2023 P case. This car first debuted in this glossy red colour in the 2023 J case as a new casting with front and side tampo work. And the only other version of this casting to debut so far is this one, which features in glossy white. It has front and side tampo and features in the 2023 P case. And this is the car which we are going to be taking a look at today. I will mention that this car does feature in the 2023 Mud Studs mini-series and is car number 3 out of 5 in that set. I will also mention that this is car number 175 out of 250 for 2023. But anyways, let me tell you where I actually found this car then. So I found this car in a local Aldi store at the price of £1.69. That's sort of the standard price here in the UK for mainlines. But anyways, I found it when Aldi stores were actually stocking Q case up. Now you can find this car also in the Q case, it does carry over into that case, and hence you can find it in the P and the Q case. So it is in both of them, so you do get 2 chances to find this thing. But yeah, Aldi stores don't very often get Hot Wheels in, they classify them as a special buy. Essentially that means once they're gone, they're gone. They don't restock Hot Wheels for a really long time, it's sometimes even years. But yeah, I heard that Aldi stores were going to be getting Q case through a Facebook collectors group, so I quickly went to my local Aldi store on a Saturday and I was really disappointed to see that there were no new Hot Wheels or any Hot Wheels at all in my local Aldi store. But then I was looking through the comments under that post and people were saying, don't worry if your store hasn't put them out yet, they're supposed to get a memo telling them to put them out on Monday morning. So I went back on that Monday morning and yes, there were 5 fresh boxes of Q case outs. I went through all of them, found everything I wanted, all the new recolours, all the new castings. And I also found 2 treasure hunts, but no super treasure hunts. That's totally fine though, because super treasure hunts are super rare here in the UK. And honestly, I don't collect for the rare stuff, I just collect the stuff I like. And I would recommend that that's what you do as well, because super treasure hunts are really rare. So don't get yourself too sad if you don't find any, because I still haven't found any in the year I've been collecting. But anyways, let me give you some facts about the real life car. So in real life, only 2,500 units of the Evolution version of this car were produced, and this Evolution version was produced between 1997 and 1999. The Evolution version had a 3.5 litre V6 engine which produced 276 horsepower and 398 Newton meters of torque, converting to 256 pound-feet of torque. This car also had a 5-speed manual gearbox and a 0 to 60 time in 6.9 seconds, and this car was also all-wheel drive. The highest price this car has ever sold for is $50,505 US, and that converts to about £40,600. And the price when this car was new is unclear. But anyways, that is it for the facts about this car, so now let's move on to my showcase of the Hot Wheels model. Alright, so kicking off this showcase then, we'll first of all take a look at the side of this car. Now, first of all, mention the wheel choice on this thing. So this car is rolling on the Aerodisc wheels, which first debuted in 2018, and on this car they have been painted in grey. I actually quite like these wheels on this car. I do actually think that these wheels look good with this thing, but I know a lot of people would have preferred some off-road type wheels since this car does feature in the Mud Stud set for 2023. Next up, for the actual colour of this car then, it is all painted in this glossy white colour. It is not metallic, and next up onto the tampo work on the side of this thing then. There's plenty of it, so let's get straight into it. First of all, we do have the Mitsubishi Rally Art striping. That is in the form of a black stripe, a silver coloured stripe, and a red coloured stripe. We also do have the Evolution writing being done in black tampo, as well as the door handle of this car being tampoed on here in black as well. I will also mention that the Rally Art logo does feature here as well, tampoed mainly in white, but we do have some red in there as well, which is accurate to the Rally Art logo in real life. I'm adding this in during editing, but I've just noticed that one of the Rally Art stripes is done in orange, one of them is orange and one of them is red. And this Rally Art logo does have a black tampoed on background to it. We also do have the Mitsubishi badge featuring here, tampoed on here in red, and we also do have 3 vents featuring tampoed on the side of this thing as well in black. Awesome detailing there. I'm honestly surprised that they did give the side vents of this car tampo. They don't usually do that on mainlines, but it's a very pleasant detail to see on here nonetheless. Alright, so that is it for the tampo work on the side of this thing then. So now onto the actual metal casting and plastic usage. So first of all, I'll mention that the rear bumper as well as the front bumper do continue around to the side of this car, and they have been created through the black interior plastic. I will also mention that this car does have mud flaps, and they have been created through the red base plastic. Next up, I'll mention that the door handle of this car does feature moulded into the metal casting. This car's door lock also does feature in the metal casting just below the door handle of this thing in the form of a protrusion from the rest of the body of the car. I will also mention that the side marker or indicator light also does feature moulded into the metal casting. A few more things to mention: the wing mirrors of this car do feature here nicely moulded into the metal casting, and I will also mention that this car's front windows are wound up. Oh, and I might as well mention that the side skirt of this car is created through the metal body of this car. It is not created through the black interior plastic like the front and rear bumpers of this car. Anyways, that's it for the side of this thing. Now let's move on to the front of this car. Alright, so next up onto the front of this car then, the detail here is fantastic, so let's get straight into it. First of all, I will mention that the headlights of this car have been done in a realistic look. These headlights have been created through a mixture of black, grey and white tampo. I will also mention that the main front grille of this car has been tampoed on here in black, and the Mitsubishi badge does return to that front grille in a mixture of white and silver tampo. Now this is actually accurate to the real life Mitsubishi badge, as the real life Mitsubishi badge does actually have a chrome trim around it. Awesome attention to detail there, once again from the Hot Wheels team. Next up, I'll mention that the front bumper portion of this car has been created through the black interior plastic, and this front bumper portion does actually have the 4 lower lights of this car moulded into it. I will also mention that the lower vent of this car does feature moulded into the black interior plastic. This vent is not a hole in the plastic, it's simply just an indentation, but it's great to see it here nonetheless. And the final piece of detail which we do see featuring on the front of this car is in the form of a skid plate. This skid plate has been created through the red base plastic. Awesome levels of detail there, and you can see those small indentations featuring on that base plastic, which are representing holes which do feature on most real life skid plates. Once again, great levels of detail there. I can't praise this car enough, to be honest. It just has so much detail, and that's awesome to see since this thing is a new casting. Anyways, onto the next side of this thing. Alright, so now onto the next side of this car then. It is the exact same as the previous side, so I'm not going to bore you with going over everything all over again. You can pause the video here for yourself if you are looking for something specific. The only thing which is different about this side though, is the fuel filler cap does feature moulded into the metal casting here. Anyways, that is it for this side of the car. Now let's move on to the rear of this thing. Alright, so now taking a look at the rear of this car then, even though there's no detail in terms of tamper work, there's still plenty of detail in the form of metal casting and also plastic usage. So let's get straight into it. First of all, I'll mention that the rear lights of this car do feature moulded into the metal casting. You could easily add your own detail to these using something like Sharpie or acrylic paint. Next up, I'll mention that the license plate holder portion of this car does feature moulded into the metal casting in the form of an indentation. You could easily add your own license plate to this car using something like a permanent sticker. I'll also mention that the trunk handle of this car does feature moulded into the metal casting as well here, and that is in the form of a protrusion from the rest of the body of the car. And we also do have the trunk lock featuring on the rear of this thing as well in the metal casting, and that is in the form of a protrusion from the rest of the body of the car. Anyways, that is it for the metal casting here, so let's move on to the actual plastic usage. So first of all, I'll mention that the entirety of the rear bumper of this car is created through the black interior plastic. I will also mention that the spare wheel of this car is also created through the black interior plastic. I would also like to mention that the single exit exhaust of this car does feature here, created through the red base plastic. And I would finally like to mention that the mud flaps of this car are created through the red base plastic, the same exact way the front mud flaps of this car are created. I would also like to mention that the tow hook portion of this car does feature here, moulded into the rear bumper of this car, but the tow hook is not present here, simply just the indentation of where this tow hook would be does feature here. Anyways, that is it for the rear of this car, so now let's move on to the top of this thing. Alright, so moving on to the top of this car then, the detail does not stop yet. First of all, I'll mention that you can see the trunk spoiler of this car featuring in the metal casting. It is not created through a separate plastic piece. Next up, I'll mention that you can see the 5 ribs which do feature in the roof of this car. They are in the form of a protrusion from the rest of the body of the car and do feature in the metal casting. I will also mention that the interior plastic of this car is black, as I've already previously mentioned. I will mention that unfortunately this car does not have any windshield wipers. That is a big shame, and it will affect my score at the end of this video by about 0.5. It's a small detail missing, but it does make this car look a little bit less complete in my opinion. I will also mention that we do have what appears to be a sun strip which has been created through a textured portion of the front windshield of this car. Interestingly though, the card art as well as the real life stock Pajero Evo do not have a sun strip, so I'm not sure why the Hot Wheels team have decided to put that there, but it is there nonetheless. I would also like to mention that we do have 2 sets of 4 small vents near the windshield of this car. These vents are simply in the form of an indentation. They are not shut-offs or holes in the metal casting, but it's nice to see them here nonetheless. And finally, I'll mention that we do have this large hood vent featuring in the hood of this car in the metal casting. This vent does not lead anywhere. It is not a hole or shut-off in the metal casting. It is simply just an indentation, but it's nice to see it here nonetheless. Although it would have been nicer to see it as a shut-off because it would have just looked a little bit more realistic, but we have to take what we've been given. Anyways, that is it for the top of this thing, and that is also it for my showcase of this car, so now let's move on to my final thoughts and review on this thing. Alright, so now it's time for my final thoughts and review on this car. I'm a big fan of this thing. I think the actual metal casting itself has been done fantastically. The only thing which I can complain about with this car is the fact that it does not have any windshield wipers. It is a small detail missing from this car, but it is a detail nonetheless, and that will affect my score negatively at the end of this video, unfortunately, because everything else about this car is really well executed. As I've said, I love the casting, I love the fact it's got wing mirrors, I love the tamper work on this thing. You definitely do get your money's worth for this car, in my opinion. It would be nice to see rear tamper on this thing in the future. Maybe a more stock release would look cool, but who knows what's going to come out next. I do think that this car will return to the mainline very soon, and I do think it will return to the mainline next before it comes to premium or anything, but we can really only guess for what's in the premium line for 2024. I also do quite like the wheel choice on this thing, but as I've mentioned, I know a lot of people would have preferred some off-road type wheels on this thing instead of the aero discs. I know a lot of people really don't like the aero disc wheels. I really don't see what the problem is with them, but yeah, loads of people just don't like them. And this car also does feature in the mud studs set, so you know, you would expect some kind of off-road looking wheels, and these wheels really aren't off-road looking at all, to be honest. I also really do like the fact that this car does have a red plastic base. It just makes this car look a little bit more sporty in my opinion, and I also really do like the fact that the mud flaps have been created through that red plastic as well. Once again, it just makes this car look a little bit more sporty, and it does spice this car up a little bit more, adding a little bit more flavour and colour to this thing. It just looks really nice. I can't pick between the red and the white release of this car. I think they're both really solid. I highly recommend you pick both of them up. Here in the UK, this car has been a bit of a peg warmer. It's not the most popular car, but I think it's a really nice new casting for 2023. But let me know your thoughts on this casting in the comments below. Do you like it? Which release do you prefer as well? Let me know all that in the comments. I love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this thing. But anyways, that does lead me on to my score out of 10 for this car. So what am I going to give this car out of 10? It is going to be receiving a 9.5 out of 10. Just a really solid car. It's definitely a great addition to anybody's collection, particularly people who love off-road type cars and also JDM cars. But anyways, that is it for this video. So if you guys did enjoy, make sure you like. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Remember, you can also press that notification bell so you do not miss any new uploads. Remember, you can also share this video with any friends, family, or any groups who may be interested. But remember, don't feel pressure to. If you don't feel like you have anybody who may be interested, you watching this video all the way to the end means so much to me, and I really do thank you for making it all the way up until this point. But anyways, that is it for this video, so I hope you guys did enjoy, and I really do hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye bye everyone.